Many people have made the claim, including Candace, that NASA has ties to satanic or occult practices. At first glance, that sounds shocking, but when you start digging into the early history of American rocketry, there are some interesting facts that give her claim a bit of weight, yet also some critical context that helps temper it.
If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us.
Unless, of course, he knew you wouldn't believe the truth, even if you told it.
Hello world, the Faceless Prophet here, and if you enjoy fringe topics without going too overboard, please make sure to like, follow, and share for more. Take Jack Parsons, a brilliant self-taught rocket scientist in 1940s Southern California. Parsons was also deeply involved in Aleister Crowley's Thelema, leading rituals, running a local OTO lodge, and even collaborating with L. Ron Hubbard on esoteric experiments like the infamous Babylon Working. And for those of you who don't know who Hubbard is, he's the founder of Tom Cruise's crazy cult, Scientology. But I digress. From a purely social perspective, Parsons moved in Hollywood, bohemian, and occult circles, connections that later brought him pyrotechnics and odd jobs in film. So yes, in the sense that Candace frames it, Parsons represents the undeniable overlap between early American rocketry and occult-influenced social networks. But here's the critical point. Parsons was fired from JPL well before the lab secured government contracts and years before NASA was officially founded in 1958. He never had control over official programs. He may have contributed immensely to the science and technical know-how, but his influence on the emerging government-led space program was effectively cut off years before it began. So while his occult life is historically documented, it doesn't automatically translate into NASA being a satanic institution. Now consider Wernher von Braun. During World War II, he was Germany's top rocket scientist and initially on the U.S. blacklist for most dangerous individuals. The Americans even considered eliminating him, but after the war, he and other scientists were brought to the U.S. under Operation Paperclip to advance American missile and space programs. Von Braun came from a context in Nazi Germany where occult influence was intertwined with technology. Some historical accounts even suggest that the Nazis claimed to have received information from alien or even demonic sources. Additionally, during the war, whenever the Nazis would invade a city, the first places they would raid were the Masonic lodges to extract the esoteric information. Despite this fact, however, von Braun became a Christian later in his life and even warned his personal assistant that much of the space age was a deception, a ploy to develop massively destructive weapons, highlighting his awareness of the ethical dangers of rocketry. Roll the clip.
Wernher von Braun gave me the assignment of preventing the weaponization of outer space from happening, but his greatest concern was about psychotronic weapons. But he would add, the public, however, won't understand that yet, so let's just call for the ban on space-based weapons. But his real concern was about the psychotronic weapon. Those are mind-controlled weapons, mind-controlled people or technology, very dangerous weapons. The first big speech that I gave for Wernher von Braun, don't worry, you don't have to really read all of these books because I'm going to transmit the speech to you. And I said, how are you going to transmit the speech to me? You're going into the hospital. And he said, I'm going to transmit it as though you're talking on the telephone with nothing, no technology in my ear, standing in front of 18,000 people, listening to him transmit the speech. It was amazing.
So in Candace's view, NASA's roots are connected to occult influences, and in one sense, she is correct. Parsons' early occult connections, Hollywood occult networks, and the shadow of Nazi occult science feeding into Operation Paperclip all give this claim some factual grounding. The social and scientific threads from Parsons to von Braun to early U.S. rocketry are real. The interplay of secrecy, elite influence, and esoteric knowledge is there for anyone who studies it closely. But here's why the theory cannot be used to label NASA as a whole. Parsons was removed long before government contracts or NASA's creation. Von Braun, while operating in morally and politically complex environments, ultimately embraced faith and ethical responsibility. And the institutions themselves, JPL, Aerojet, NASA, were built by large teams of engineers, administrators, and scientists, most of whom were motivated by practical engineering goals, not occult agendas. agendas. The public face and the actual organizational decision-making were overwhelmingly conventional and professional. So while the origin story contains threads of occult influence, it's not evidence that NASA as an institution was founded as a satanic organization. Yet, as a subtle note for those paying attention, the word NASA itself sounds eerily close to the Hebrew word to deceive. Maybe it's just coincidence, but it's enough to leave a hint for some of Candace's suspicions. While not fully provable, might still contain a shadow of truth. So let me leave you guys with the dots that I've connected regarding all of this. Parsons was fired by the very company that he co-founded because of his unorthodox methods, poor record keeping, and his occult practices before JPL actually became NASA. Through his occult ties to Bohemian Grove and fellow Crowley followers in Hollywood, he was able to land pyrotechnic gigs to survive, but it wasn't enough. So he had the genius plan to sell his technology to Israel and start a new life, but suddenly and mysteriously died in a lab explosion at his home at the ripe age of 37. In my honest opinion, that was divine justice being delivered, but it was likely carried out by government agencies, not a self-unaliving or accident. Parsons wanted revenge on the very country that made him a millionaire because he was fired from his own company before they fully got in bed with the US government and gave birth to NASA. But just because the government took him out, does that mean the satanic influence went with him? Of course not. If there is one thing I will agree with Candace on, it's that Satanism and scientism are one and the same. Though NASA may not officially be satanic, that does not change the fact that Parsons was not the only Crowley follower. And lastly, let me just end with the fact that there are many open Luciferians currently working at CERN, where Satan's throne is in Geneva, Switzerland. Why is that? Well, Revelation 2:13, of course. I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is, and thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. Revelation 2:13. Where was Antipas martyred? Yes, in Geneva, Switzerland. So though Candace opened the can of worms, I want to open Pandora's box and draw your attention to something even bigger than the NASA deception. The real satanic shit is happening at CERN. Well, that's all for now, but if this video helps shed some light on all these fringe topics online, please don't forget to like, follow, and share for more. But until next time, the Faceless Prophet out.
If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us.
Unless, of course, he knew you wouldn't believe the truth, even if you told it to you.